This video is going to help you have much more student engagement in your course. Of course, it's always easier when you have students in front of you in a traditional class to prompt them, get them to raise their hands, have a discussion, students talk to each other. It's much more challenging online because students are sitting behind a screen by themselves and not in the classroom. And of course, SUNY wants our online courses to be as close to our traditional courses as possible. And so I use discussion boards as my way of getting more student engagement. So let me show you how I do that in my course. And this works for both Brightspace and Blackboard. In fact, the rubric that I'm going to show you was imported from Blackboard. What's interesting about Brightspace is I've found, because I have literally hundreds of what you would call pages in Blackboard that are now in Brightspace. The only thing that did not import perfectly were my little emojis, so my little smiley faces and things like that. I had to go back and edit all of those. But other than that, it seems like every single thing has come in perfectly. Tests and rubrics and all the files and docs, everything. So that's good news. They really did a nice job, D2L, with the import feature. So we're going to go to the discussions. Okay, so let's go to the lecture module discussions. Okay, so we all know that repetition breeds excellence, right? And you practice any sport, whatever, you keep repeating. So I think it's important for students to have some type of repetition in their discussions so that if they make some mistakes the first time, they know how to correct them the second time. Also, as we know, as the brain, the neurons get more solidified, the more often they see the same thing. So I think this is going to help students. So for my discussions, I have the same 5 questions every single week. The only thing that's going to be different is the concepts that were developed. So I want students to think about what they find most interesting, why it's interesting, what surprised you the most. For example, this week we're on thunderstorms and severe weather, and a lot of students are surprised that the tires are not what keeps you safe in the car. It's actually the metal frame around the car. Okay. And then I want them to think, what's something you've learned in this course that you think will be useful? So if it's a majors course, obviously the majors are going to be able to use everything after they go. But many of our 100 and 200 level courses are what we might consider to be a survey course, where students are satisfying electives. So, for example, I might have 2 or 3 meteorology majors per semester, but I have 24 to 35 people in each class. So I want them to feel like taking this course not only satisfied their science requirement, but they actually took something away that they might find useful. So that gets them to think about, okay, this isn't just a weather course. There's something in here that I actually can use after I go. And then I think number 4 is the one where they can really get into it, and that is, how does society benefit from any of the concepts developed here? Obviously, with thunderstorms and severe weather, understanding the signs of a tornadic thunderstorm, and people can see that, they can take cover, what's the best way to be safe from that and so forth. Students will write, architects have to design buildings correctly in hurricane zones, and they have to be elevated and things like that. So I tell them not to choose meteorology or pilot because, of course, those are professions that you're always thinking about the atmosphere. So pretty much everything in this course is important to a meteorologist and a pilot. And then the last one, we call it the muddy question. That is, what wasn't so obvious to you, what was confusing, and what have you done to try to decrease the confusion? All right, so that kind of forces students too, because they don't have to answer this, that they shouldn't just walk away not understanding something, that they should actually make an effort to try to figure it out. I think too many students don't get something, and then instead of trying to figure it out on their own, they just wait till they come to class next time and raise their hand. I call it the walking into a store, and instead of looking for your item, ask the first employee you see, hey, where do I find this? It's like, give it a shot yourself first. And then, of course, it's not a discussion if they're not commenting on other students' threads, so they have to comment on at least 2 other students' threads. So basically, they're going to do those 5 every time. Now, in order to make sure that they're doing it the way I want them to do it, I have this rubric, and you're welcome to copy this rubric. You can email me, I'll send it to you. It's really a modified rubric that I found somewhere on the internet. So it's kind of like blues music. Who really is the author of the song, right? So I've set up my categories, I think number of words is better than number of pages, because if you do number of pages, then they can use a super large font or wide margins, whatnot. We all know students can figure out how to pad their pages. But word count, no matter what you do with fonts and spacing, word count is word count. And I just basically copy and paste their text into Word, and it immediately shows me the word count. Okay, so I think 500 words is reasonable. That's basically a page and a half, maybe 2 pages. Okay, this is probably the most important one if you're doing this the first time, timeliness. If you don't reward students for turning in their posts early, they're all going to do it the day it's due. And how much of it, so for example, my discussions are due by the end of day Sunday, 11:59 p.m. If I didn't have that timeliness category, probably 90% of the posts would go up Sunday afternoon or Sunday night. And that does not give other students a chance to comment, and you really can't have a discussion with time running out. So basically, if I assign this discussion on a Monday, if they don't post their very first thread by Thursday, 11:59 p.m., they can't get this maximum point here. So students have an incentive to try to get their posts in early, which is good because that gives the class more time for people to comment on it, for other students. Quality of posts, this is a biggie here. You can copy this, whatever, but I think the key is blooms here, blooms. I'm going to go back and show you the blooms level. I think we have to teach our students about the blooms level taxonomy so they understand that when they leave college, they're supposed to be at least blooms level 3, and we really want them to be level 4 and above. Too many of our students just memorize information and they don't truly understand it. So a lot of our questions are blooms level 1 and 2 because that's kind of what we're used to doing. I think a lot of high schools are doing that too. So we really want to elevate our students' thinking. If they know blooms level 3 and 4, then they know they have a target. They have a map to try to get there, and I'll show you that. Obviously, we want them to, have good grammar and spelling. It still surprises me the number of students who don't use the spell check button in Blackboard or Brightspace. I tell them write it in Word and look for the little red squiggly lines and make sure you fix those. So basically, when I paste into Word for word count, I see all the squiggly red lines and you just count the number of mistakes. I really don't think there should be any, but you can see my brackets here. Then we want them to comment on other students' posts. So, we got a little tag I got to fix here. So students, I want them to comment on at least 2 other student posts. I want their total words to be at least 300. Okay, and I say substantive word. So I don't count things like, hey, great post, good job, loved reading it. That does not offer anything at all. And of course, we also get Bloom's level on the comments. And I think of all of the things on the rubric, getting Bloom's level 3 and 4 on comments has been the most challenging for students because more often than not, they just like to agree with what's already posted. But that's not really extending the discussion. We want students to offer new items within their comments or to expand on what they've already read. So let's go back to the Bloom's taxonomy. Let's see, that is going to be here, how to study. So I have a couple things in here on Bloom's taxonomy. So there's the classic pyramid, right? So we basically want students to get beyond remembering and understanding. We want them to start applying what they've learned and then maybe draw some connections, analyze with different ideas. So on this page, okay, there's a nice little criticalthinking.org that it's nice for students. I have the Bloom's taxonomy. I have 3 different videos. The first video is, I think it's the first one, it's one of these 2, is a student explaining how she was required to use Bloom's taxonomy and how she was successfully doing that. The other one is an animated video more for instructors, how to, what is Bloom's taxonomy and how to use it. And then this one I think is kind of cool. Harry Potter, they basically take scenes from various Harry Potter films and they show in this scene, it's remember, then understand, apply, analyze, so forth. Okay, but I think of all of the items, this one's the most important. I tell students, print this out and keep it next to you. And I actually have this printed and I have it next to me when I'm grading their discussions. So I tell students, think of these as verbs. So you want to be applying and analyzing to get the highest score. Okay, so I think the easiest way to get analyzed in my class anyway is for compare and contrast. So how does this concept compare or differ from another concept we've developed in class, that kind of thing. Or this one here, where I call question. I tell students, a lot of times I see them write, oh, I was wondering if, I don't know, I can't think of something right now. I was wondering if such and such happened, what would happen? And I always write back, that's where you go to Google, you go outside and you figure it out. So if you have a question and then you go and answer it, you're doing Bloom's level 4 because you're analyzing information. Okay, these are important for students to know. And then I also have in here basically, most students cram the night before, and I tell them that brain's not designed that way. We have discussions about short-term and long-term memory and repetition. And I show them this study cycle, and then I say, okay, so now when you're ready to study, here's the way you want to do it. Do it in chunks. Don't sit down for 2 hours. Although I got to be honest with you, every time I ask students how long they've studied, if they study 1 to 2 hours, I say, do you think that's enough? And they say, oh my gosh, that's the most I've ever studied. So I think we have a little bit of effort deficit going on here where they think 30, 40 minutes for studying is actually a long time. And of course it isn't. Okay, so we get back to our discussions and we have that rubric, and I think I've probably showed you everything here. Now, one last thing is, you're always tempted as an instructor to just jump right in and start commenting or whatever. I tell my students, I want students to be having the discussion, and I'm more of a sort of moderator or sort of a lurker in a sense. And I said, every once in a while, I'll pop in and put a comment in there. And usually it's if there's a mistake, because you don't want to let that go, and you have to be diplomatic about it. Or if there's something that I can sort of relate to. Like, for example, in the lightning topics, students were talking about swimming pools. And I told them one time when I was scuba diving, I was under the water with my buddy, and a lightning storm came across the top. And we just basically sat at the bottom and looked up and watched the show, because we know in this class that lightning only travels on the surface of conducting objects. So as long as you're underwater, you're totally safe. The reason you're not safe in a pool is because how long can you hold your breath in the deep end? As soon as you come to the surface, if lightning strikes, zappo, you're gone. So I'll post little things in there like that. I often find, too, that if you put little personal tidbits in there, they kind of like that, kind of humanizes the instructor for the course. So that, my friends, is the way I do my discussions.